Oh, hello guys and gals, me Mutahar, and you know what man, things may be looking dire, that video game crash is happening, but you know what, I think that this is actually a pretty good situation in some capacity, right? You might be like, Muta, why are you looking forward to one of our favorite gaming industries dying out? Now, I'm not the kind of person that looks at something like Xbox getting rid of 3,000 fucking jobs, and the fact that my physical PlayStation discs are not making it past 2028 for crying out loud. Yeah, there's been a lot of bad shit to talk about. But the reality of it is that I'm one of those people where I actually want to see how this plays out because I think greed has been one of those things that has gone on farther than it has. So to give you a quick understanding, I'm actually really positive because for the first time, I have not seen this level of backlash. And I've been around on the internet forever. I've been here since the days when Xbox came out and they're like, if you don't have the internet, just go buy a 360. The level of metric backlash they ended up getting was fucking insane. I've been here for all of the greats that have been playing out. But basically, ever since Sony has said that they're not going to make discs anymore, bro, the cyberbullying that I've been seeing on the internet is fucking paramount. So for instance, on the PlayStation support side, you just have some fucking innocent person teaching you how to use a fucking PlayStation controller. Like, did you guys know that on your PlayStation controller, you can voice chat using the little microphone? Not know why you would do that, but immediately underneath it, you got motherfuckers going, what button do we press for physical games? Play has no discs. I mean, we've even got the AI slop grok army fighting against us with AI generated posters. Personally, I love this image quite a lot. Fuck Sony. Very simple, very easy to come across, and it's all those discs that we've grown to love, enjoy, and buy. It's interesting that companies like Sony have gone on to do this, and you might be like, well, what has been the backlash even beyond this, right? Has there been anything going on beyond just memes? Now, me personally, I didn't know that I had the PlayStation Plus Essentials, like the cheapest version. It's one of those things where, like subscriptions, I tend to forget if I actually was subscribed. So under my PlayStation, I actually saw that I had something on for I think it was like a $12 auto renewal, turned it off. Unfortunately, this is where, again, these things are kind of a double-edged sword. A lot of people who are inside the industry have went and said, I sympathize with physical media fans, but Sony will not reverse the decision. They, of course, knew what the online reaction would look like, and they now wait for the storm to pass. So basically, they're just in that we're going to post through it phase, Like, maybe one day the gamers will forget. And unfortunately, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but I think a lot of normie gamers really just don't give a fuck. And at the end of the day, they're the lion's share of the people that Sony is selling to. So for instance, this is somebody that brings up the fact that Sony has 120 million active PlayStation users. Around 50 million subscribe to PlayStation Plus to, play games online with friends, which is one of the things that I had briefly done with PlayStation, right? The few games that I do play with some of my buddies online, I can't play with them on PlayStation. I can play free-to-play stuff because that's not under the same umbrella rules. But yeah, there's a lot of people that pay monthly for PlayStation. As a thought experiment, let's say 500,000 people cancel in protest. That would be just 1% of that business gone. And it really wouldn't be enough for Sony and unfortunately the investors to care. One thing that has sort of come out of this, and again, ever since this whole story broke, you would think all this drama would be financially negative to Sony. Unfortunately, in a lot of cases, if you look at the last 5 days, they've actually been up around 4 to 5% in their stock price. In fact, overall, it doesn't seem like this is actually negatively affecting them whatsoever. So you might be like, Muta, why is that the case? Negative backlash? Is it just the internet? No, the reality is our favorite industry is, unfortunately, a fucking cutthroat business. And for a lot of people that have invested in this business, when they see Rockstar Games going fully digital, PlayStation going fully digital, and $100 price tag for a video game, that gets people's fucking dicks completely erect. Does more work than Blue Chew or Viagra or any of those goddamn pills, right? Because at the end of the day, that means more money going into the accounts for Sony and more money ending up in the accounts for a lot of the shareholders that basically aren't actual gamers. They're people that have looked at gaming as a proper vehicle for investment. And those people are absolutely ecstatic. Like I told you guys last time I was talking about this, there were shareholders mad that Rockstar Games still has an $80 version, apparently, of GTA 6. They would have been like, get rid of the $80 version, put in $100, okay? GTA 6 is so fucking hyped, they could have probably got away with a $120 version, and people would be digitally pre-ordering it, right? For me, I don't understand the hype for digitally pre-ordering a game. GTA 6 is one of those games that I feel at this point I can wait for the PC version for it to fucking drop. But even if I am going to play that PS5 version, like let's say that game is like 100 on Metacritic and every one of my boys is on there, the fact that it's digitally available still doesn't give me an incentive to pre-order the game. Because what are they going to do? Run out of fucking digital copies? Like if tomorrow I get an email, by the way, the digital downloads are running low. You might want to pre-order. I think I would probably ask how we in society have managed to fucking make a digital download a limited resource. Like it makes no sense. Physical media makes sense if you're pre-ordering because it's like, maybe they will run out of fucking copies that day. It's a possibility. We've even had it with banger games this generation, right? Like, what was it? Expedition 33? I wanted to go get that game physically. It wasn't really on my radar. By the time I was interested, they fucking ran out of discs at the store. So, yeah, it's one of those things where obviously, listen, in a digital future, I don't understand the people that are already giving the $60 to the company, especially even in GTA 6's case. Like, I'm hyped for the game, but you haven't even seen, like, a gameplay trailer yet, right? Like, you can kind of hold off. I mean, even the pre-order bonuses, dog, you will get them like a week before, the game comes out. You could literally wait a week before, charge your credit card, and still be in the same situation as somebody who's pre-ordered now. But anyways, this ain't the fucking pre-order digital games like rant, okay? This is the talk about the gaming industry. And, where, again, the positivity for it kind of comes out because ultimately, at the end of the day, people are waking up. Now, one of the pieces of misinformation that I kind of saw floating around was that apparently one of these Sony executives ended up trading like 54% of their shares. They just ended up selling that shit off like 2 days after this whole digital disc drama. So here is Totoki Hiroki's like actual SEC filing form. And the reason I'm showing this to you guys is that at the end of the day, yes, this is an individual that sold 225,000 shares at the price of $21, something around, I think, like $4.7 million. And the reality of this is that at the end of the day, whether you operate in America or Japan, you are subject to the same insider trading laws. This was not something that was planned ahead in advance. If anything, these CEOs or insiders usually plan these stock liquidations like months in advance, according to a very regulated trading plan. So no, the CEO of the company is not just dipping out of PlayStation. This is probably, in all likelihood, him just getting ready for like extra liquidity or extra stock that's coming their way. Really, this doesn't say anything. It happens all the fucking time, right? The reason I know this is I've followed a lot of financial scams in my time on this platform, okay? I know when people are gaming the stock system, and I know when people are just doing what is generally insider trading anyways. So ultimately, at the end of the day, no, this is not Sony finding ways to leave, or at least their top leadership leaving the industry, right? This is something that you would see regardless every step of the way. What you are actually seeing, and what is really important in the context of the story, is that a lot of people are actually kind of waking up to the fact that, are we owning our games? Look, if we're going to live in a digital future, right? The point of a digital future is that even if physical discs are gone, and I guess in the future it's all gone, Sony's not going to backtrack. And here's the thing, back in the day when Xbox was doing some really stupid shit with like internet required connections on their consoles, Sony was there. They were the competition. They were the people saying, listen, you want to share your discs around? You can. You want to fucking have an offline experience? You can. Right now, Xbox is not, shitting all over Sony and telling us that we have physical discs in the future. What Sony has done is something that Xbox has already done, okay? The reality of it is our physical media is unfortunately a thing of the past. As much as I hate it, it's a thing of the past. So at this point, instead of, kind of being a doomer about it, it's time to accept that if we're gonna go into the future, right? If let's say all gaming is now digitally done, now we need fucking protection for you and me. So this is a change.org petition, which is funny because, you know, for a long time I never really filed or never really signed any of these. It's actually been this is something that I did personally sign. And it has gotten up to 234,000 signatures. In fact, it's crazy. The last time I looked at it, it was at like 70,000. So clearly it's catching like wildfire, and the important part about this is not whether Sony will listen to this. They won't. The important part is people are actually asking the question. So the question here is, how do we fucking preserve our games going forward if everything is digital? So I think the real fight is not necessarily with the physical discs. Physical discs are actually great in one respect for me, having a 1.0 initial version of the game. So for instance, if down the road you want to play Final Fantasy VII as it initially released, you can take this copy of the game, install both the discs, and just have a dandy old time. But here's the thing. The physical disc, in this case, is still not preservation, and I'll explain why. So ultimately, at the end of the day, when you purchase a PlayStation, you're buying a system that is a proprietary platform. So to give you an idea, at the end of the day, a PlayStation is an x86 64-based computer, right? It's a computer that, you know, is built by Sony and their partners. And at the end of the day, it runs an operating system. So if you go all the way back to the PlayStation 4, and you can kind of look at the PS5 in the same way, they load up an operating system based off of FreeBSD. So here, on a development kit leaked out, you can see that PlayStation is using the Grub bootloader, the same bootloader I used to use back in the day, right? This is booting into something called Orbis OS. So every time you fire up your PlayStation 5 and it tells you what account do you want to log into, it's just loading up a BSD operating system. And BSD is available on pretty much anything. Does that mean you can just take the PlayStation operating system, load it up on your computer, and then install a game? Absolutely not. Because underneath the operating system, there's a whole range of proprietary shit that the system is loading up. And ultimately, at the end of the day, being proprietary does not mean you have any control even over these physical discs. So back in the day of the PlayStation 2, you know, that was like the last generation of consoles where, you know, Sony wasn't updating the consoles. If you bought a PlayStation 2 and you bought video games, those games had to be complete, playable experiences. The operating system normally couldn't even connect out of the box. There's a great video by a YouTuber, this girl named Fami, who actually looked at things like the PlayStation 2. I think it was the BBN, which was like the early precursor to like the PlayStation 3, where, you know, basically you had this kind of internet-connected console that could receive updates and download entire games. Back in the PlayStation 2 era, you literally purchased a box, and if you kept care of that, like I did, your PlayStation 2 probably still works to this day. And those discs work just fine. The difference now is with the PlayStation 3, 4, and 5, these are systems that, you know, in their respective generations, all other consoles as well, shipped with, you know, system updates, firmware updates, yada, yada, yada. PlayStation 5, let's say, for instance, Sony at the end of this year says, we're going to patch PlayStation 5 and say, you can't play, you know, let's say some of your old disc games. Let's say that they sent out an update in November, right? Or actually, better case, let's say they sent out an update in September this year. And that update is like, that update says, okay, we're going to block this so-and-so game from launching on your system. Let's say, for argument's sake, they say, we're going to block Silent Hill 2 disc version from running on your actual system. Now, would that be illegal? I would imagine so. I mean, I'm sure you could take Sony to court over it. But let's say that they push an update that says, we're going to block you from playing Silent Hill 2, or basically whatever game. Now, you as a user can say, okay, I'm not going to update my PlayStation, right? Like, I'm not going to go through that process, so I should be fine. And in theory, you can just leave your PlayStation 5 completely offline, no auto updates, disconnect from the internet, and you can keep it in stasis. But then what happens in the future, right? What happens if you want to play something like Grand Theft Auto 6? Well, that game comes out in November. So when GTA 6 drops, you have to be connected to PlayStation Network to download it. And in order to do that, you have to update your system. So you see what I'm getting at, right? You have no control over that system. You have no control over that hardware. That hardware can impose whatever restrictions it wants. And unless you're comfortable with giving up, playing something in the future on the hardware that you own, there's really almost nothing you can do about it. And at the end of the day, the crux there is not, the physical disk, it's something called DRM. Now on computers, we also have DRM. We have DRM to the point that some gamers probably know of something known as de novo. We all don't like de novo, but unfortunately it was a part on a lot of PC games. For instance, this game, Doom, has de novo anti-tamper. Actually, it was removed today from the game. So meaning that if you are somebody that wants to preserve Doom, there is nothing stopping you from just downloading it off Steam and now copying this game over to a hard drive. I'll actually walk you through it. A lot of people have this misconception that Steam games are only playable underneath Steam. That is true for a lot of games, actually. But in case you're playing something like this where, Routine is this horror game, wish I could put more time into it, but unfortunately I didn't have more than an hour or two and something came up. And anyways, let's say I want to play this game without Steam, right? Now I can go to the actual game files here, and since I have those game files stored on my system, my actual drive, you can see that the actual launcher for the game is routine.exe. So to show you how this stuff works, I'm going to fire this game up without Steam. So because I'm on Linux, I'm going to use this prefix and I'm just going to tell it to run, routine underneath. Now this prefix doesn't have like Steam installed underneath it. The only reason I'm going through this route is to basically run the game as if I never had Steam installed. I don't have anything of that nature. So right over here, you can see that I got routine.exe. Now I can launch this program, and basically what'll happen is in a few minutes, it'll actually just launch the game right here. So you can see literally without Steam, you can even see in the same frame that Steam has not detected the game has launched, but I have launched the game right over here, separately away from Steam. So the DRM wasn't present, and I can basically possess this game. I can share this file with another computer. I can send these files to, I don't know, my brother, for instance, and he can play the game himself. But at the end of the day, I now own this game. Unfortunately, with PlayStation, with Xbox, we're not at that same level, okay? Without their license checks, without us being on good graces with them, you lose access to effectively your entire digital library if these companies want that. And that's something that I feel gamers should kind of wake up to and realize that, listen, if we're going to go into this future, look, the physical fight is important, and I want physical discs to stay around. If Sony keeps physical discs for PlayStation 6 and beyond, I might be incentivized to buy a PlayStation 6 and still put money into that ecosystem. But now we realize the ecosystem is closed, and the only way to achieve actual ownership and peace in the digital world we live in is to get rid of this DRM stuff and make it so that we own what we buy. There has to be two things. They can't take away the content away from us, and they can't just revoke us. When you give somebody your $60 for a game, you should be allowed to basically own it forever. One thing that I find important with discs, like I said earlier, was that 1.0 version, right? It's one of the reasons why even a game that I really love, Cyberpunk 2077, if I was to go to GOG, which is primarily how I enjoy and purchase the game, I can download all of these files and keep the game on my system forever. I can make my own Blu-ray physical copy. But you see, something interesting about this is, even though that I bought the game digitally, you can see that I don't have access to 1.0. The furthest back I can go is 1.63, but you can see that there is a point in this entire situation where I can't access the original game as it released. And that's something you unfortunately can only do via the physical copy. Now you might be like, who the fuck wants to play Cyberpunk 1.0? It's not that who wants to play it, it's that you had the opportunity to, and now unfortunately it's now normalized to rip that away from you. And that's not something that I'm entirely okay with, obviously. But I think going forward, listen, if we're going to be gaming, we need to make it so that we actually own the shit that we buy. That's important. And one of the reasons why, again, I'm on PC, and I guess it's the only path that makes sense going forward, is that at least the PC is an open platform, You can build whatever computer you want, shitty computers, really great computers, and as long as you install Windows or Linux onto your system, you can just download whatever launcher you want, download your games, and in many cases, those games don't have DRM. Those are games that once you buy them, those files on your computer can be run without anybody else. You know, we used to, back in the day, have the ability to purchase Windows XP on a disk, and, you know, provided we had a 25 character code, didn't need to connect to any online servers to install your operating system. In some cases, you can still do this with some flavors of Linux, right? Like if you download like Fedora Server, and not the workstation which I use, you can download certain versions of Linux and still have like offline installable media, right? But that's the thing. We are shifting towards a world where a lot of these companies want you to have digital ownership, but it has to be tightly controlled in their walled gardens. And that's not something I, nor you, nor anyone should feel comfortable with, okay? And I think to tie it all back to how I started this video gaming is reaching a crash point. We're gonna crash. Video games are coming to at least this AAA industry is coming to a crash because of their hyper monetization. Because eventually people who, you know, now are realizing that, listen, I don't really own what I buy. You know, in order for any of these companies, these platforms like Xbox and PlayStation to survive, they either have to completely open themselves up, which kind of kills their entire purpose for existing. Because really, I think for people going forward, it's like, look, gaming's already expensive. If the next PlayStation is going to be $1,000, I might want to build a cheap computer, right? Something that is still affordable. Install Steam, install Epic, install, you know, or use GOG or do whatever to play my games. Hey, with PC, I have access to older libraries through emulation. So again, for a lot of these businesses to kind of survive, I think the nickel and diming, as much as people are kind of like defeatist about it, is going to catch up. And the more people kind of realize that when they purchase a game on PlayStation, if you're going to spend $60 digitally, right? Maybe it's better if you spent that money on a cheaper computer, played on something like Steam, maybe played it on slightly lower settings, or maybe the same settings, right? Like, hey, you can still play you might not be able to play shit on like ray traced, path trace, but hey, neither can the fucking PlayStation in many cases. But at least in that case, you are now building towards an open platform that, you know, 20, 30 years from now, you'll still have access to, or even if, let's say, Steam goes down, you can still download a cracked copy of that game, or at least if you have it sitting on a drive, copy it over to an external drive, burn the files on a Blu-ray drive yourself, and just preserve it on your own, right? Food for thought. You know, the gaming industry, it's dire. It looks bad. Layoffs, fucking losing access to our physical media. It's a bad situation all around. But there has never been a better time for a wake-up call than what has been going on right now. So if you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Just like if you dislike it, I am out.